that intergenerational linkage can happen. It is key within the Rasta community, because they do bring their children to Bingi, and at places like Bingi you would have reasoning amongst the elders, so the children would sit and they would learn those kinds of things. If we go back traditionally in Africa, because I am an initiate with the Dogon people of West Africa for the last 8 years, and in the temple it's traditional for the children to sit, so we'd have like the storyteller. The storyteller wasn't just telling stories, it was oratory. So what they were doing was giving information to the next generation. They were using it as a way to pass down. So the fact that the youths are now creating this space for something which is actually very ancient and very traditional. So, you know, the human genius is there, the psyche is there, that's coming back, and then having that intergenerational dialoguing happen is key, because it needs to be passed down to the next generation. So it's actually wonderful that these spaces are being created, because it's part of our DNA.
And as part of DNA, can you speak about yours in terms of the kind of what your journey, I say, as a consultant, as a healer, as one of the elders, of course, sharing the wisdom and knowledge. Can you speak on your pathway?
Okay, I'll just give a synopsis, right? Growing up in UK, but when I was about 9 years old, my grandmother took me to Jamaica to live for a while. So I got a taste of something different from the towns and the cities. So by the time I came back here and I reached a certain age, Rastafari, you know, I began to look within my blackness, my black consciousness, and began to seek answers that I couldn't get in this European society. And so I actually, by the time I was 19, I traveled regularly, and by 21 I left England and I went to live in Jamaica, and I was there for 15 years. And I was in the hills, I was in Bobo Shanti, Nyabinghi, 12 Tribe, we were planting, you know, so that whole journey happened there. And when I left to come back to the UK, I then, from my experience, I was in the music, and herbal medicine was something I really loved. It was part of the culture. And so what I did was, when I came back, I did a degree in medical herbalism. So I had the other side. There was a traditional side, and then I did the scientific side. So I did 4 years at the University of Westminster. And I've been practicing for 12 years in clinical practice. And most people gravitate to that part because you've got a degree and so on and so forth. But what I would say is that when I went to places like Kew Garden and these major institutions where you have professors and so forth, they actually got their PhD by going and sitting with the traditional people in these regions. And there is no way you can get your PhD in a particular area if you are not learning from those people. So I first of all acknowledge the traditional healing, the traditional healers, that traditional wisdom which our people had, and which things like the pharmaceutical industry came out of, because it was plants first, and then, you know, the first plant to be used was the first mass-produced product was aspirin, which traditional healers were using the willow tree. And so they took the active ingredient, salicylic acid, and Bayer, that German company, created the first mass-produced product. And that's only like, you know, just before First World War, Second World War. But it's not very long. But human beings have been on the planet for millions of years, let's say hundreds of thousands of years, and we've been using the plant kingdom. So in terms of the healing journey, all along the way, within the Caribbean culture, within the Rasta culture, and within the African culture, healing is actually a part of our whole way of life, our whole culture, because how they look at human beings is different. A human being, if you see in the traditional culture, at different stages in the human being, certain development, certain rituals are carried out. At 7 years old, maybe when they're going into manhood, womanhood, what you would call puberty, then maybe when they're getting married, then eldership, and then when you transition off of this earth. Those points in a human life are marked because they understand that the human has to develop in different ways. And when we're talking about healing, the first thing is to understand, well, what does it mean to be human? And if you're healing, what does health look like? What does a healthy person look like? Because then that is what you have to look at to emulate. So when you're healing, it's a journey, and it's a process, but what is the end product? What is the end goal you're trying to get to?
Within regards to that end goal being very much connected to foundation, connected to the roots of the herbs, how do we maintain that connection now for those that have been separated? How do they reconnect with what's important in just going to source? How do we do that more so, and how do we maintain that balance of what is unified with it within the practices as well?
So what I would say is that the first thing, the person has to look within themselves. And I say that because if we just look at the physical aspect, I always ask people, what are you made from? And people will say blood and bones and yes, and cells and proteins, and yes. But if you and I'm talking about, so when I say you, there are different aspects of you, because there's a physical aspect of you. And then there's that non-physical aspect of you. There's the psychological aspect of you. There's the emotional aspect of you. How well do you know you? How well do you know how your heart perceives, how your mind sees? But if we go back to the physical aspects, and so that's what I'm speaking about when I say, well, what are you made from? When we break down even the tissues and the proteins, and when we break them down, what do you get? You get the basic elements that make all life: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, magnesium, potassium, whatever these individual elements that you want to call them. These intelligences come together, and depending on how they come together, they make different expressions of life. So we, in the physical form, first of all, come from what we know as Earth, Mother Earth. So by connecting to ourselves first, we understand that this body that we are in is a living entity which must feed from itself to grow. So then we talk about that aspect of that vital food, that natural living, feeding from the earth, which is why in this day and age we have so many diseases, whether it be high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, because now when you enter into a process, these processed food, these manufactured foods, that the body's an intelligence. And it recognizes itself. It recognizes its constituent components. So when you put it in, when you put something in your mouth, you don't have to say that part, okay, create my eyelash, create a heart, blood vessel, no. As it enters your mouth, then there's an intelligence that takes it to where it needs to go. You do nothing. So it's that intelligence that we're talking about, which we are a part of, only a part. Because when we come onto this earth, we don't do anything. The only thing the human being does is feed ourselves. That's all we've got to do, and even that we get wrong. So, I say, if you go to bed at night, do you say to your heart, okay, beat 6,799 times, and then in the morning I'll take over? Got nothing to do with that. The beat in the respiratory system, you don't say to the respiratory, keep breathing. So that whole reconnection is, first of all, understanding self at the atomic level, and in the tradition we call it tem, which is where the word atom comes from. There's a whole ancient Kemetic aspect to things. So at the lowest level, or at the what they call the macrocosmic level, because it's the microcosm that makes up the macrocosm. They're one of the same, but in different aspects. So first of all, understanding yourself on a physical level, what you're made from and how you relate. When you're talking about, that's nutrition, but when you're talking about the plants now, the plants take it to another level, especially the healing plants, because now it's not about nurturing, that's one level. And then we're talking about healing. If the tissue should get torn, if they should need repairing, if there's a certain aspect of the physical body that needs healing, then the knowledge of the herbs that act on that part of the body is the next stage, which our grandmothers knew. Yes, we had traditional healers that knew even more, but it was it was a part of our culture. So it is about, and these spaces create that space for that dialogue to take place. So these were cornerstones in our communities, and it's great to see that is being rekindled and coming back together. That's what I would say.
Fully agree. Thank you very much. It is really, really kind of magnificent to be in these spaces, for this to take place, and to be sharing these with one another, and allowing everyone to be and to connect and to share, and also in aspiration with common goals, with a common vision of just being present with one another. So why, if not why, how and what support do you think we need in order for us to do this on a longer period of basis, so this can carry on happening over and over time, connecting everything you just spoke of, then connecting with the healing aspects of our physical body, of certain ailments, certain injuries that are also connected to the diseases. What support do we need in order for this to proceed, so then we can connect with that?
I think the first thing I would say is an awareness, a conscious awareness. At the moment, our youths have so much distractions that is not necessarily positive for them. So, and those distractions come with a lot of marketing behind them, a lot of money pumped into it. So it's easy for these youths to just look at all the other stuff. And we want our youths to have fun. We want them to enjoy their life. But they too will become elders. And so we want them to be able to preserve their lives. So the wisdom is important for them to have and then to pass to their children. So these spaces, first of all, is important. So where people are practicing these things, the youths can get an opportunity to have those kind of dialogues. But then even behind that, we need people who, because we're in Europe or in the UK, so then we need people who work within the system to have that vision, to understand that actually, these organizations or these private companies that may have foundations that may be looking for the longevity of our children, but also it also fits with the what they have these buzzwords now, environmental. Yeah, to us it's just a natural way of living. Yeah, so they've got all of these buzzwords, but looking after the environment. So it actually fits into that. So actually helping youths like yourselves who are putting these things together, having access to these funds that you can create these places and spaces, and then also to maybe open doorways for these youths to learn these skills, whether apprentices or creating these workspaces or these places where these youths can learn these key healing modalities. So for example, my title is medical herbalist. It's more than that, but okay, I'll call it medical herbalist. Now, we're not talking about having lots of money, and that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is something more important. During COVID, we were able to give people herbs and medicines, people who were really sick, who were really scared, and to be able to assist them through a time which we've seen people have come out of wanting to commit suicide. They've come out being mentally unstable. When you're able to not only preserve life, but to help life move forward, that is priceless. And it doesn't money, because these youths now are so ingenious on TikTok and on these spaces. They can actually use these skills, and actually if it's funds they want, if they want money, they can actually make themselves very wealthy, because actually people now are looking a lot more to the natural things in life, using herb, all this plant foods now is what people are talking about. We call it ITIL, so it's just another word, it's just repackaged. So I'm trying to find all these correct terminology that's being used, and youths are actually getting very creative with these things. So it's preserving life, maintaining the planet, and also inculcating the wisdom of the ancestors, pass it over. I think it's a wonderful package. So more funding, definitely, allowing apprenticeships and those kind of things, that they can see that it's not just going on a stage and dancing. That is one aspect of it. But actually, when that dancer come off, if they could have bronchitis, they could have respiratory issues, they could have skin issues, that then you can also heal that person. You can use that and heal. They might have sleeping issues. So, you're healing a human being. So, I'm saying that from my perspective. So, I just think there is so much scope here. I think since the George Floyd and since Corona, I think a window has opened. Some people may see that, this system and what it may do. Yes, there's that aspect, but a doorway has opened now for humanity to elevate, and that's what we want for our youths. We want our youths to rise to that next level. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, and they will, with yourself sharing messages and sharing that wisdom like that. We can only propel and we can only project to the spaces and to the places that we wish to be again much more connected with one another, much more connected to ourselves, our roots, and what has been laid for us before, or the Sankofa before, and in front of us as well. So really, really important, and I give thanks as well. I give thanks because I'm able to be exposed to this level of information, this level of wisdom, and this level of education as well that I can put in application. By I also mean for the generation that are around me, because I can share that. Based on Urban Circle, I've been able to be in a position where I can share this with those that do want to listen. And what I was also thinking, because I've seen your son, your son is here with you. Yes. He expresses himself. I've seen he was on there drumming, and I've seen elements that he expresses himself. I don't know if there's a summary or if it's in depth. What have you put in terms of the teachings for him to be able to express himself in the way that he wants to, with that awareness, the awareness to his roots as well?
Yeah. So one of the things for me was that my children be exposed to the nature. So they grew in Rastafari. And that meant, they were regularly going to Jamaica. They were visiting Jamaica. They were going to the Naibingi. They saw us planting and they saw us growing. When I came back here, whilst I was here, I work with local community projects. So we were growing food, we were growing herbs, we did beekeeping. They've done all of that. We started a project in their school, food growing. They were with the wheelbarrows planting the food, and so they've been very active in that. They've been connected to the earth. When I went through the Dogon initiation, they were right there with me, and when I graduated initiation, they were right there with me. Their father is a master drumming, so they've always been with him. One of the older son was in Jamaica with him, going into the local communities, the ghetto, where ghetto youths were, and his father would help those youths out of the ghetto to help them, to rise to different levels. So their whole life they've been exposed, and that it's challenging because, like I said before, all of the other messages that the children get, it's about drugs and guns and it with that kind of peer pressure, it can be very difficult, it can be very challenging, but we've tried to hold on to them, and we've got them on that path. So we just keep that message. But the other thing is as well, when they see youths like yourself and others, and they can see ones like yourself who's in this world, when they come here, because if they had just came and seen elders, they're like, well, there's no one representing me, right? So when they come and see this kind of dynamics as well, they see, okay, I can. So it's important that it's at all levels. You got the elders, you got the next generation coming up, and then the ones behind that, so they can see the whole line coming up. So we've done our best to play our part, but it's a community, and we know that as a people, it is the village that raises the child, and that's what I would close with. It takes a village to raise a child, and I'm so thankful for the village and for people like you being part of the village.